I'll go ahead and remind everyone that we are recording these sessions. So you will be able to have access to both the PowerPoint slides later as well as the live recording. And we would ask that everyone keep themselves on mute during these sessions. If you have a question, please type it into the chat box, and Joy Rumley, my lovely assistant, she's not really my assistant, she's my program manager, will get my attention and read those questions out to me during the presentation. So please feel free to use the chat box for that. So I'm gonna mute myself for another minute or two, and then we'll get going. Thank you for being here this morning. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I hope and trust that everyone is in a position to have grace with the technology this morning. My name is Rebecca Rowe. I'm the Associate Director of the Community Revitalization Office at the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. With me this morning is Joy Rumley, who is the Program Manager in the Community Revitalization Office. Many of you have probably spoken with her. She manages the Enterprise Zone program as well as IRF, Port Host Communities, and Virginia Main Street. So she knows it all. Again, for those of you who are just joining us, this session is being recorded. You will have access to both the PowerPoint slides and the session recording within the next couple days. We ask everyone to keep themselves on mute to cut down on the background noise. If you are unmuted, we may mute you for you. And we'll go from here. Joy, am I missing anything for housekeeping?
I don't see anyone that is well, we do have some folks just on the phone. So if you are just on the phone, you won't be able to add any comments in the chat. So feel free to unmute yourself and add a pause in the presentation. Go ahead and ask your questions, or we will have time at the very end. If you're not able to get your question in, we'll have time at the end to ask questions. So if you're on the phone and don't have access to the chat, feel free to ask us at the end.
And now I'm sharing my screen, so I can't see any of you. And what you are hearing is my dog. So anyone that has Finnegan. Anyone that has kids or dogs or cats or spouses that are also working at home with them today, I'm sure you can see my pain right at this moment. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. So again, this is the Virginia Enterprise Zone How to Apply workshop. And we are starting this morning with the Job Creation Grant. So we're going to start with an overview of the Enterprise Zone program, and then the Job Creation Grant qualification process, attestation requirements, and then 2020 application submittal process. And a couple of things will look different on that. And I can't promise that this is what the process will look like in a couple of months. If 2020 has taught us nothing, it has taught us to be ready for the pivot. So DHCD is committed to creating safe, affordable, and prosperous communities to live, work, and do business in Virginia. And Enterprise Zone is just one of the programs that we use for that. The Enterprise Zone program is a partnership between state and local government to encourage job creation and private investment in targeted areas of the state. And the program accomplishes this by designating zones throughout the state and providing two grant-based incentives, the Job Creation Grant and the Real Property Investment Grant. And the state incentives are available to businesses and zone investors who create jobs or invest in real property within the boundaries of enterprise zones. I sincerely apologize. Qualification for the Job Creation Grant and Real Property Investment Grant are based on the calendar year and administered annually. Since our grants are performance-based, the jobs must be created and the real property improvements must be completed before the grant applications are submitted. Applications are always due April 1st of the year after the calendar year in which the real property improvements and job creation are completed. And if April 1st falls on a weekend or a holiday, applications are due on the first weekday thereafter. That is not the case for 2021. In 2021, I believe April 1st is a Thursday. So keep that date in your mind. You will see it on a lot of these slides. So April 1st, 2021 for any jobs created or real property investments that were placed in service during calendar year 2020. Job creation grants. The Job Creation Grant is available to businesses that create high-wage, full-time, permanent positions with health benefits that are net new jobs for Virginia. And for jobs created in 2020 that had been reporting to work and were made remote as a result of the current public health emergency, we will have some grace with that as well this year. Some ineligible businesses, units of local government, of course, and nonprofits. A lot of this comes down to the NAICS code, so take note of the NAICS codes here. Anything falling under those does not count. The Job Creation Grant is available to any eligible business, new or existing, that are located in an enterprise zone who have created grant-eligible jobs over the base year employment levels. So this is probably something that we will be answering the question a fair amount this year, because it could be that some job creators have lost positions this year. So keep in mind that this is not a year-over-year job creation. This is year. So if your company came in with a base year of 20 jobs, and over the last couple of years, they've gone up to, say, 50 jobs, but this year maybe saw a retraction to 40 jobs, that 40 is still over the base year of 20. So those 20 jobs would still be grant eligible. So for grant year 2020, if you're coming in for a first year, you can either choose 2018 or 2019 as your base year. And new businesses will have a base year employment of 0. Keep in mind there is a 4-job threshold for qualification for the job creation grant. So you have to create at least 5 jobs to qualify. And when we say jobs, we're really talking about permanent full-time positions, 48 months worth of work. So it could be that you started creating jobs in June, you hired up with 10 full-time people, and that is 10 full-time equivalent positions over 6 months, which would then be the equivalent of 5 permanent full-time positions over 1 year. It's all in the spreadsheet. Just fill out the spreadsheet. Grant eligible positions, they must be, again, net new to Virginia, permanent and full-time positions, earning at least 175% of the federal minimum wage and offered health benefits. And of course, it's 150% of federal minimum wage if you're in a high unemployment area. We'll get to that in a second. Restricted positions, personal service, food and beverage, and retail positions. Personal service, we count as pretty much anything that is touching a person's body or an animal's body. So groomers and things like that. A question that we get sometimes around food and beverage, say you have a craft brewery and you have folks that are working both maybe in the warehouse as well as on the tasting room floor. If they were hired primarily to do warehouse work or something like that, but they also pull some shifts in the tasting room, again, it comes down to that NAICS code, how they were hired. So if their primary role is food and beverage or retail, that would not count. But if their primary role is operations for, say, the brewery, and they happen to do some shifts in the tasting room, that position may count. And then things like hotels, where you would have food and beverage and retail staff as well as back office staff, housekeeping, things like that. Some of your positions will qualify and some will not.
Hey, Rebecca, we have a question around what about law offices and title companies? Do they qualify?
I can't think of any reason they wouldn't. But again, it will come down to the NAICS code. But yes, those are professional positions. So at least in terms of the work they're doing, they should qualify. But again, these have to be full-time positions with report to work requirements, offered health benefits, and so on. So as long as they meet those other requirements, that should be fine. So permanent full-time positions, these are jobs of indefinite duration at a business firm located in an enterprise zone, requiring the employee to report to work within the zone on a regular basis at least once a month. So again, we referred to the fact that potentially or probably, depending on the job, you may have created some jobs in the last few years that are currently in a work from home or remote work position. So, communicate that with your CPA, and then CPAs, please note that with the application. But this year we will be waiving that specific requirement as long as it is a job that otherwise would have reported to a business within the zone. And these positions must be normally scheduled to work either a minimum of 35 hours a week for at least 48 weeks, 35 hours a week for a portion of the taxable year in which the employee was hired, or a minimum of 1,680 hours per year. So again, let us know if you have any questions on that. As you fill out the spreadsheet, it really does a lot of these calculations for you. Meeting the wage and health requirements, these positions must earn a base wage, again, of at least 175% of federal minimum wage or 150% in high unemployment areas. And there we've broken that down for you. So if you are in a high unemployment area, your wage rate threshold is $10.88. If you are not, then your wage threshold is $12.69. And if you are paying $14.50 or better, or the equivalent of $14.50 or better, then you are eligible for $800 per position rather than the standard $500. And the employer must offer to cover at least 50% of the cost of the health insurance premium for the employee. The employee does not have to accept that health benefit, but it needs to be offered to them. So high unemployment areas. These are the high unemployment areas for calendar year 2020. And we do have more information in our grant manuals about how we determine high unemployment areas. We did have a couple of zones fall off this year. We also have some communities in joint zones that are not high unemployment areas. If you have any questions, please be in touch with your local zone administrator or be in touch with our office and we can help you make that determination. Also noting that if you were located in a high unemployment area when you came in for your first year of job creation grants and now maybe your locality has dropped off the list, you are grandfathered and will remain tied to that wage rate for high unemployment areas for the duration of your 5-year job creation grant window. So some changes to our high unemployment area list, excuse me. Localities that have fallen off the list in the last couple of years, cities of Franklin, Covington, Martinsville, Galax, and then Greensville, Halifax, Henry counties, Lancaster, Mecklenburg, Page County, Prince Edward County, City of Portsmouth, and Richmond County. And again, reiterating, if you had previously applied for the JCG as a high unemployment area applicant, you will be grandfathered for the remainder of your 5-year grant period. Also, just want to make sure that everyone really understands that 5-year grant period. As I said before, these are jobs created year over base year and not year over year. So if you are a job creator, please remember that you have 5 years that you can be eligible for these funds every year. And then there is an opportunity for a second 5 years as well. Any new businesses applying for job creation grants in these zones are, of course, not grandfathered because they are new applicants. So they would need to meet the 175% of federal minimum wage. So DHCD will be accepting job creation grant applications for grant year 2020 from businesses that have increased employment over their base year by more than the 4 job eligibility threshold during calendar year 2020. And CPA attestation is a required component to all JCG applications except when the applicant has a base year employment of fewer than 100 permanent full-time positions and grant eligible positions of less than 25. So if you are a job creator and you have any questions as to whether or not you would be required to have a CPA attestation, please be in touch with your LZA or with us. We don't want you to pay for a service that you don't need. We want you to be able to see the full benefit of the grant program.
Hey, Rebecca, we have a question around the grant. So the funding that they get in the grant, is there a restriction on how they use that money?
There is not. That is your money, although my understanding is that it is taxable, but you would want to talk to your accountant or tax attorney about that. So the job creation grant awards are determined based on wage rates and the number of full months worked during the grant year. Up to $500 a year per net new permanent full-time position, earning at least 175% of federal minimum wage, 150% in high unemployment areas, with offered health benefits. You're going to hear me say a lot of the same things a number of times, but if you are anything like me, that's how I learn best, hearing it again and again, because a lot of times it's knowledge that just kind of sits there until you apply it and put it down on paper, and then it starts to click and make sense. So up to $800 per year for net new positions earning at least 200% of the federal minimum wage, again with health benefits. And businesses can receive grants for up to 350 positions per year. So there is a cap on what you can receive. Currently, the federal minimum wage is at $7.25 an hour. So there's another handy chart for you to see what those wage rate thresholds look like. So again, calculating the awards, let's say you have a base year of 2018, and in 2018 you had 10 permanent full-time employees. And then for your grant year, 2020, you had 20 permanent full-time employees. All of these positions will, let's say, are earning 175% of the federal minimum wage. They all worked the full 12 months, and all 10 over the base year are offered health benefits equal to at least 50% of the premium. So you can see that calculation: 20 grant year employees, less the 10 base year employees, less the 4 jobs for the eligibility threshold, equals 6 grant eligible permanent full-time positions. That is $500 per position, equivalent of a JCG grant award of $3,000. Again, a business can apply for the job creation grant for a period of 5 years as long as they maintain or increase employment over the base year of employment by at least 5 net new permanent full-time positions. So 1 permanent full-time position over the 4-job threshold. And businesses that have finished their first 5-year grant period can come in for a subsequent 5-year grant period, provided they are still creating new jobs that are eligible to receive job creation grants. But if you are coming in for a second 5-year, you will have a new base year. So say you came in for the first time in 2014 and you had 20 jobs for your base year. You increased it, say 20 permanent full-time positions over the next 5 years, and you closed out your 5-year cycle with 100 permanent full-time positions. That 100 would become your new base year for your next 5-year grant period. And that the next bullets kind of go into that. For the subsequent grant periods initiated more than 2 years after the previous 5-year term, the base year must be one of the 2 preceding years. So essentially going back to how it was originally. If you have not come in for a job creation grant for 3 or 4 years, you don't go back to your last year of grants. You go to one of the past 2 years as your base year. So we're going to take a look at how the job creation grant worksheet looks and how it works. One thing that we really want to remind people is please fill this document out left to right. Copying, pasting sometimes can lead to errors. Skipping from one row to the next can also lead to errors in the way that things are calculated here. So yeah, this is how it looks. Let's jump into it. Oh, and I already mentioned some of these things. Fill it out from left to right. Do not skip columns. Do not disrupt or change the formulas. And some cells are locked to protect their formulas, and other columns are hidden, but are, of course, doing those calculations on the back end. And cells will turn red to signal potential errors. Potential errors, not necessarily errors. So as we see on this worksheet example, the cells have turned red because you enter the last 4 digits of the social security number for the employee. And it is possible that you may have 2 employees that have the last 4 of their social the same. Patrick Henry and Patrick C. Henry apparently both share the last 4 digits of their Social Security number. It's not necessarily an error. It is just pointing out to you that you may want to double check those numbers. Another item here that has been highlighted as red, Henry Lee III. You're going to have him listed twice on the worksheet because let's see, it looks like March 10th or 11th, his wage rate changed from $13 an hour to $15 an hour. So if you do that math, at $13 an hour, that position is eligible for a $500 grant. Once it goes over $14.50 an hour, now that position is eligible for $800 per grant. So anytime that person's wage rate changes, you'll have a separate line for them, and those calculations will follow through. Now with John Tyler Sr., looks like he was employed from January 1st through March 1st, and then I don't know, he took a sabbatical, he went and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro or something, and he came back to permanent full-time employment on May 1st. So you will again have him listed twice because we are calculating the number of months worked. You'll also notice that some of these cells are completely blacked out, and the reason for that here is that these are your base year employees, so they are not counted in the grant calculations. Those are the base year employees, so their wage rates are blacked out. Hope that makes sense. Similarly, who is this? James Monroe. For whatever reason, his position was not offered health benefits, so that is not a grant eligible position either. Any questions on the worksheet or anything we just looked at there? I'll pause for a second.
I'm sorry. How do you treat someone who goes out on FMLA?
I would ask my CPA that question. So I think as long as they are still considered an employee, if they are still being paid, then they would still be counted in the spreadsheet during that time. But we will capture that and confirm an answer. But as long as they are still a permanent full-time employee with you, and it is more that kind of leave of absence, John Tyler must have fully left employment in order to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro before coming back in May. So I think someone who's on FMLA is still considered an employee. And again, continue to type your questions in the chat box, and Joy will get those to me. So more on the worksheet. All JCG applicants must complete the worksheet. Again, $12.69 an hour if you are not in a high unemployment area, and $10.88 an hour if you are in a high unemployment area. The worksheet calculates grant eligible positions filled during the grant year. It automatically calculates the qualification information to be used in the form. And if a position was not filled for the entire year, then the worksheet will prorate that based on the months employed. So all of that is automatically calculated for you. And based on the dates of employment, the worksheet will automatically distribute full months worked at the eligible wage rate requirement once the wage data is entered. So again, with that position where that person was being paid $13 an hour for part of the year and then $15 for part of the year, the worksheet will calculate how that shakes out in terms of the grant amounts. All of that happens for you. All employees filling permanent full-time positions in the base year and grant year are included on the worksheet. Positions that should not be included on the worksheet, if they are not permanent full-time, if they are contract or seasonal, or if they are part-time or as needed, they do not go on the worksheet. They do not go on the worksheet if they are churned positions, if they are food and beverage, retail, or personal service, and those that are not meeting the report to work requirements. So I'll mention churned positions would be those that say those positions were, your firm is relocating from Fairfax County to Henry County. Those are positions that already existed in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that would be considered churned. So those are not grant eligible positions. Now, if you are a business firm that at the time that you left Fairfax County for Henry County, you had 50 positions, and when you move to Henry County, you create 50 new positions. Those 50 new positions are not churned, and those would be grant eligible. So wage information only needs to be listed again for the permanent full-time positions hired after the base year through December 31st, 2020 that have been offered health benefits. An employee given a raise during the grant year must be entered on separate lines for each wage rate. We want to make sure that you, as the job creator, get every grant dollar that's coming to you. So salary wage conversions, because some of these jobs may not be hourly, some may be paid $45,000 a year. To enter that in the worksheet, divide an employee's annual salary by 1,820 hours. Include shift premiums and commission, but do not include bonuses or overtime. Calculations must be shown in the attestation report. Salary conversion example is annual salary of $32,000 a year divided by the 1,820 hours equals $17.58 an hour in wage rate. And again, let us know if you have any questions on that. So I'll mention the printing instructions for the job creation grant worksheets. I won't read them all, but definitely if you are printing out that worksheet, follow the printing instructions, and you will want to capture exactly the portion of the worksheet that you have information in and only print that. Otherwise, the worksheet is 3,000 rows and it will print 4 days. And so you don't need to print all of that if you only have 50 jobs listed. So follow those printing instructions. Okay, so some of this is going to change up a little bit this year. Let's see. Online, our Form Easy JCG must be submitted by 11:59 p.m. on April 1st, 2021. Applications for Enterprise Zone are not done through CAMS. And let me also mention that at 11:59 p.m. on April 1st, 2021, Joy and I and all of the other Enterprise Zone staff are going to be at home asleep. So if you are submitting at 11:50 and something is going wrong, there's not going to be anyone at that help desk. So please don't wait until the last minute. Go ahead, Joy.
They will still be allowed to submit. The portal will not close at that time. So you will still be able to submit it, but for us, it will look like it came in on April 2nd. So at midnight on April 2nd, you will still have access to the system up until May 15th, because that's our deadline for a late application. I think Rebecca will get into that. Anything after that on late submissions, but what I'm saying is the system is still open, but it will appear to us as a late application.
Yeah, so just because it allows you to submit an application, don't necessarily think, oh, well, it didn't go through until 12:05, but it went through, so I'm good. It's going to, that would be considered a late application. And we do have a process for dealing with late applications, but we only process and review them if we have more money than grant requests for those that were received on time. And that has not happened in years. So at this point, late applications essentially won't be funded, but we don't know what next year will bring. We don't know what we're going to get in requests this year. So, but please be on time. Hard copies, if necessary, must be postmarked on or before April 1st, 2021. And some of the components of that, the forms are the Easy JCG, the high unemployment area form if you're in a high unemployment area, the Commonwealth of Virginia W-9. This is one of the things that we have to request the most for applicants. This is not the IRS, not the federal W-9. There is a Commonwealth of Virginia W-9, and you can get that document on our website. The CPA attestation should be submitted with the application, not after the deadline. The attestation and the application itself are the only things that will count as a late submittal if they come in after the deadline. If we have to come back and ask you for the correct W-9, that is fixing the application. That is not a late application. But if the attestation is not with the application, that would make it incomplete and therefore a late application. Unless, of course, you are a firm that is exempt from the attestation requirement. And job creation grant worksheets for all year one applications and those that are exempt from CPA attestation. We do need to see those worksheets. All application materials and the link to submit those forms are available on our portal, our online application site. Let's see. We'll talk more about that when we get to the process. Okay, waiver of the CPA attestation report. It's waived if a firm, again, has a base year employment of 100 or fewer positions and creates 25 or fewer grant eligible positions. Note the and there, this is not an or. So if you had a base year employment of 100 or fewer positions and you create 26 new jobs this year, you will need an attestation. Waiver eligibility must be determined each year, and the firm must still complete the required worksheet and submit to DHCD for review. DHCD staff will monitor each firm that is able to waive the attestation requirement annually using the procedures outlined in our CPA attestation manual. So now we're going to get into the application itself. It's organized into 4 parts, which we will get into here. Part 1 is the background information. Business name, your trading name, if it's different from the legal name, date you began operating in the zone, FEIN, your NAICS codes, and so on. Most of this is self-explanatory. Again, checking that box if you are a standard application or if you're in a high unemployment area. And then the signature of your local zone administrator. And we will talk about that in a little more detail when we get into the application process itself. Any questions so far?
Yes, we do have a question. It is about, not about this application, but around calculating base year wages and base jobs. So do you want to go over that now or wait?
Let's go ahead and do that now.
Okay. Do base year employees' pay rate have to meet the enterprise zone wage requirement to be included? Another way is, can the base year jobs make less than the $12.69 per hour?
For the jobs so really what we're looking at here is grant eligible positions. So if you have for your business firm, say 20 positions that are not grant eligible and 5 that are grant eligible, we don't want to see any of those 20 that aren't grant eligible listed on the form at all. So it would only be that 5 that we would be looking at. So that's kind of a long way to say if they are making less than the wage rate threshold, no, they would not count as a base year employee because they are not grant eligible positions.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, feel free, Joy, to interrupt me and ask questions as we go. Gives me a little break from reading slides. Part 2, the qualification information. Again, a lot of this is self-explanatory, but if this is your first time seeing it, definitely feel free to reach out to us, reach out to your local zone administrator with any questions. The grant year requested is going to be for calendar year 2020. Let us know which qualification year you are in, and then the base year that you are using for your firm. And the base year will remain static every year. So if 2018 is your base year, then that is what you will put on that line every year for the 5 years that you qualify. Grant eligible positions. So this tells you exactly where on the JCG worksheet to pull that information from and enter it here onto the application form. And all of this will be auto-calculated for you. So pull the information from the worksheet where it asks you to, and then where it's not asking you to pull anything, it will calculate. All right, job creation grant follow-up monitoring, everyone's favorite. All JCG grantees are monitored in their first grant year, and grantees must maintain all documentation regarding qualification for the JCG for a minimum of 1 year following the final year of their 5-year grant period. So if this is your first year in and you will then qualify for grants through, say, 2025, you need to keep all of your documentation until at least the end of 2026 in case there is a need to monitor your application. Grant recipients that did not have adequate documentation regarding permanent full-time positions, report to work criteria, wage rates, or the provision of health benefits may be subject to repayment of some or all of their grant award. And repayment for the job creation grants may be deducted from future grant awards. If you are past the period of being eligible to apply for more grants, then there would be a repayment. For 2020, a report to work requirement will be waived for those positions that became remote as a result of the public health crisis, but we will want that noted. And we will accept an email from the local zone administrator in lieu of a signature if necessary. However, we will also accept hard copies and electronic forms, electronic signatures from the local zone administrators. Some of you that went through this process with us last year know what this looked like as people were no longer able to see each other in person, or people didn't necessarily have everything they needed to sign documents electronically or scan them and so on. If it is your last resort, we will accept the email from the local zone administrator stating exactly what is on the application form, that your business firm is located within the zone. But please be in touch with us, be in touch with your local zone administrator if you think you are going to need any accommodation like that. So I will pause again just to see if there are any burning questions for anyone before we get into some of the next rounds. Because I've been talking for about 45 minutes straight. All right, seeing and hearing no one, we'll keep moving. So here are the agreed upon procedures for JCG, and these really have not changed. The CPA agreed upon procedures, the attestation to the application information is required, and the attestation must be performed through DHCD's agreed upon procedures under the attestation standards established by the American Institute of CPAs. And the report and documented procedures are used by DHCD when processing and monitoring grants. Any discrepancies between the attestation and DHCD findings will be reported to the Board of Accountancy and may require repayment of some or all of the grant award. The procedures manual provides an overview of eligibility requirements, required grant documentation, applicant and CPA responsibilities, frequently asked question text boxes, hyperlinks to definitions, and an outline of the agreed upon procedures. The first half of the manual covers the job creation grants, and then the second half covers the real property investment grants. And a sample engagement letter template is as well as the required attestation report forms are available on the Enterprise Zone website. For job creation grant, the CPA must perform the following 4 procedures and report findings after each procedure: attestation of prohibited positions, permanent full-time positions, the required documentation, and grant eligible positions. So procedure 1, regarding prohibited positions, the CPA will review that the NAICS code listed on the form JCG to determine that the NAICS code listed on the form is other than the retail, food and beverage, or personal service. For permanent full-time positions, the CPA will follow the sampling procedure explained below to review employment documentation and the JCG and JCG High Employment Area worksheet for employees filling permanent full-time positions during the base year and/or grant year. Again, firms with fewer than 100 employees that filled permanent full-time positions, the CPA will review a random sample of the documentation of 20 of those permanent full-time positions listed on the worksheet. And if the firm has more than 100 employees, the CPA will review a random sampling for 20% of all of the employees on the worksheet. And we do have a required random sampling procedure within that attestation report. Non-reconcilable errors. The CPA will report findings on any difference between information on the documentation provided and what is listed on the worksheet for employees in the sample population. And the applicant can revise the worksheet to remove those non-reconcilable errors, but the CPA must report on initial findings in the attestation. The CPA will continuously select subsequent sets of 20% or 20 employees from the original worksheet population until the random sample produces no non-reconcilable errors. So some of this, don't ask me to explain it. There's a reason I'm not a CPA, but if you have questions that we can't answer about the attestation, we can definitely get answers for you. And my guess is, even though I can't see everyone who's in the room right now, that we probably have some CPAs here with us today. Procedure 3, the required documentation. The CPA will compare the JCG or the High Unemployment Area worksheet for base and grant year employment information listed on the worksheet to the required documentation. So that would be I-9s, payroll records, health benefit enrollment, as well as the signed forms for the health benefits and health insurance waivers if the employees are not getting their benefits from that employer. For I-9s, if you have employees that have been in your employment for so long that I-9s were not around when they were hired, that's fine. The CPA will note that. Okay, qualifying wage rates and health benefits. The CPA will review the qualification information on Part 2 of Form EZ JCG and compare whether the information entered on Part 2, boxes 4A and B, and boxes 5E and F corresponds with the auto-calculated values on the worksheet. And the CPA will indicate any discrepancies in the attestation report. So again, CPAs, we will be re-reviewing these sheets, so we will note any discrepancies, and if there is a discrepancy that we find, we will come back and ask for a review of that or some explanation, but it is the CPA's job to make sure that that explanation is already there so that we understand what's happening when we look at that sheet, and that really makes the process go much more smoothly and is a requirement. CPAs must use our attestation report forms, and the report should clearly indicate that each procedure was performed in its entirety. Reports must state the findings for each procedure and should avoid vague or ambiguous language. So we need that to say that there were no irreconcilable errors. There is very specific language that we need, and that's in the manuals as well. Applications with reports where no findings are reported or only the CPA's initials are listed will be considered incomplete and will not be processed until the report is resubmitted. So again, initials are not considered an adequate report. Late attestations, applications submitted without the attestation, again, will be considered late, and late applications will be processed on a first come, first served basis if funds remain after on-time applications are processed. For the past 7 grant cycles, no late applications were considered as all allocated funds were expended on the initial round of applicants. So not just that, but I will mention it's more applicable when we get to the real property investment grants. But with those 2 kinds of grants, job creation grants receive first funding priority. So all job creation grants are paid out at 100%, and then whatever is remaining in the enterprise budget for that year is prorated among the real property investment grants received. So any questions about the CPA agreed upon procedures for attestation for job creation grants?
We didn't have a question on that, Rebecca, but I did want to ask William's questions for the benefit of everybody on the call. Will the slides or a PDF copy of this presentation be available? And I responded that yes, we are going to email all registrants. So even if there were folks that had registered but couldn't attend, you will get an email copy of the PDF. And then as soon as we can get everything updated, it will be on our website as well. So we just have to work with our web request staff to get that uploaded, but we will be doing all of that just as soon as possible.
All right. Now the grant year 2020 application submittal process. Budget and proration. The General Assembly has allocated $14.5 million to fund grant year 2020 job creation grants and real property investment grants. Again, job creation grants are the funding priority and are paid in full first, with the remainder being prorated to the real property investment grant applications. So again, this speaks to late applications, knowing that we generally have to prorate. Don't have a late application, the likelihood of that being funded is minuscule at this point. And proration is calculated upon grant disbursement in June or July of each year. So we can't tell you right now what proration will look like. We can give you our historical data. So the last few years here, 2018 was prorated at 74% and 2019 was prorated at 83%. It's lovely to note that the big difference there, I think, between those prorations is that as of grant year 2019, we went from a $13.5 million allocation to a $14.5 million allocation. And that, of course, allows us to get closer to fully funding all of the applications that come in. So our grant year 2020 applications are due on Thursday, April 1st, 2021. And here's what that whole cycle looks like. So January of 2021, our online submission system opens. April 1st, 2021, applicant is the deadline for submitting to DHCD. If you are just an overachiever and you are ready to go on January 1st, bless your heart. That would be amazing for us to be able to start checking those boxes and reviewing as early as possible. May 15th, 2021, that is our deadline for notifying you, the applicants, of any deficiencies in the application that need to be corrected. And then you have until June 1st of 2021 to resolve those deficiencies. June 30th of 2021 will be the notification of qualification, and then July of 2021 awards are sent to the qualified recipients. Any questions on that?
I will say, Rebecca, we usually get things out the door sooner than that. We do try to get grants processed mid-June, so we do try to expedite that as much as we can, although we can't always do that. That's kind of the worst case scenario timeline for those.
Yeah, those are our hard and fast deadlines, but definitely internally we try to aim for a couple of weeks before that. But that June 1st deadline, that is your deadline, but again, don't wait until the last minute for things. So funds disbursement. Please note that DHCD can only accept the Commonwealth of Virginia W-9 form. This is what it looks like. And this is a live link. So when we get the presentation out to everyone, you can click on that, go to the website and find it. Just do a Google search for Commonwealth of Virginia W-9 and you will find that document. All right, our application process. You start with you, the applicant or zone investor, confirming with your local zone administrator that your business or property is within the boundaries of a zone. That is step one. If your business is not within the boundaries of a zone, you stop there. You're not eligible this year. Applicant enters an engagement agreement with an independent licensed CPA. Again, for job creation grants where you have fewer than 100 full-time positions for your base year and you create fewer than 25 positions in the grant year, you do not need the attestation. Let us know if you have any questions on that. Then the applicant gathers and completes the application material. And the CPA reviews the application materials and prepares the attestation report. Then the applicant submits the application via our portal and the easy application submission system. You will be prompted to save and print a hard copy after hitting submit. Then the applicant will obtain the signature of the local zone administrator on the hard copy of the application form. And again, for 2020 only, if the zone investor is unable to obtain a signature, either scanned or original, from the local zone administrator, an email from the LZA stating that the subject property or business is located within a zone will suffice. But that is kind of last case scenario. Also new in 2020, attachments can be uploaded through the portal, including those documents requiring signatures. And we're going to see in a couple minutes here what that looks like. And then the applicant sends DHCD signed hard copies, if necessary, of all application materials, including the CPA attestation report, and applications must be postmarked by April 1st of 2021. Now, if you uploaded your attachments through the portal, all of your attachments, creating a complete application, then you will not need to do the hard copies. But let me say that if 2020 taught us nothing, it's that some of these rules, some of this guidance can change at a moment's notice based on life, based on acts of God. So you as the zone investor, please be in touch with your local zone administrator if you have any questions, because they are the ones, the CPAs in our system and our local zone administrators will be the first folks that we are in touch with if anything changes about this process for any reason. And, you know, we worked very hard earlier this year to be as responsive as possible and as customer friendly as possible. And that is definitely the direction that we will be going next year as well. So we will do everything we can on our end to make the application process work for you within the confines of our guidelines and what is possible, but being cognizant of life evolving. So there are some things we will be able to help with and some things we will not. For instance, April 1st, 2021, that is a hard and fast deadline. Submission of hard copies, so delivery methods. Online submission of all attachments is highly encouraged, but it is not required. If you are sending us hard copies, certified mail with return receipt requested, postmarked by April 1st of 2021. UPS, FedEx, or other services where shipping can be tracked with a shipped date no later than April 1st again. Hand delivery by close of business April 1st. This is not recommended. I can do my best to be in the office that day, but you know, we always say that hand delivery is not recommended for this application process. And if you're submitting more than one grant application, we recommend that each application and those attached materials should be sent separately. When you log on to the Enterprise Zone portal, if you elect to upload your documents this year for the job creation grants, this is what the portal will look like for submitting those documents. So we have broken this down in terms of each attachment. So the applicant declaration form, PDF versions of the worksheet, Excel version of the worksheet, the attestation form if you're not exempt, Commonwealth of Virginia Form W-9, and then the LZA review and signature. Any questions here?
Yes, we do. So we have a question. Will the declaration still need to be an original inked signature even if we are uploading?
So Joy, I might need help from you on this one. Is there an electronic signature option through the portal?
No. So what they will do is the very top thing that says applicant declaration form. What we have for you guys is what it looks exactly like in the application, except it is just the applicant declaration portion. You will have to print that off, sign it, scan it, and then upload it here where you can upload documents. So you won't have to upload the entire application, just that declaration piece. The same thing with the LZA review. There is a document that just includes that LZA review portion where you can complete, the LZA can fill out the property address and the assurance that it is located within their zone. They can sign that, email that as a PDF to the applicant. The applicant can then upload it there in the LZA review portion right there. So we will not need the original inked signature if you have the signature scanned in and uploaded in the applicant declaration form and the LZA review portions. from everything that I've read online, that is still considered a legal signature. So we do not have a easy sign document or anything like that. It is just a scanned version of that signature.
So thank you, Joy, for that explanation. And I asked Joy to respond to that because she has been the one working with our IT team on this portal and getting this all set up. I will also note, though, hold on to your application documents, everything that you've scanned. Of course, we already mentioned you need to hold on to everything for the monitoring, but hold on to that packet just in case. Just hold on to everything.
Yes.
But it really should be a very user-friendly process. I'm sorry, Joy, are there more questions?
No, I was just going to say, I think later in the presentation, we do say that you need to keep all of your application materials for 3 years. So print all of this stuff off, have it in a file folder, stick it somewhere in case we were to review it for monitoring or some other purpose for that. So if you want to go ahead and have your application printed off and hard copy sign that just for your file, even though we're accepting the electronic signature, that would be probably advisable to just keep all of that together.
Yeah. So Joy mentioned the 3 years. I think that's for the real property investment grants. And we mentioned earlier for job creation grants, that information at a minimum that you get your CPA, you will need to hold on to that for at a minimum 1 year after your final year of receiving the grant. So again, just go ahead and be a pack rat on this one. Keep all your documents. Email confirmations. Email addresses must be provided with the application, and the grant applicant will receive email correspondence from DHCD throughout the application process. You will receive these emails with successful submission of the online application, including attachments uploaded to the portal, receipt of the hard copy application if you submit a hard copy, deficiencies or request for more information, and then confirmation that the deficiencies have been resolved. So let's talk about the emails for a second then. If you submit your online application and you do not get an email confirmation, please check in with us, because if anything was entered incorrectly, that is the email address, again, that we are going to go to for deficiencies. And if we are emailing you there and trying to get in touch with you and not getting a response because something was entered incorrectly, you are going to potentially not going to know that you have a deficiency and then not be able to correct it in time. Also, with that being said, when we have deficiencies that need to be resolved, we always email the applicant as well as their CPA. So, we do everything we can on our end to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to really get in touch with you so that you have every opportunity to correct those deficiencies. But do your best to make sure that we have your correct contact information so that we can get in touch with you. Joy, was there a question?
Not that I can tell.
Okay. DHCD again recommends that applicants print and keep a copy of the email notifications with their grant records. And the application information, additional information about the program and the application process can be found on our website, and the online submission system. Normally we do this in January. The online submission system will be open starting January 1. And remember that applications are due by, I'm going to assume that you all shouted April 1st, 2021. And early submittals are highly encouraged. So a couple of tips this year. Assemble all of your application materials and attachments before you begin the application. The system will time out and will not save your work if you leave for a period of time. So be ready to upload your documents and do all of that in one shot and to not have to walk away. So if you are familiar with some of our other how to apply workshops, where in CAMS you can save it and come back to it. In this system, you cannot. So be ready to go. Use Google Chrome if possible. That is definitely the best interface with our system. And the W-9 must match the FEIN, the Federal Employment Identification Number, in the application. We communicate primarily via email. Again, keep those written records. Therefore, please use an email address that is active and regularly monitored. Any questions about the application submittal process? Okay, we still have time for questions, but I just want to drop this slide here. This is our contact information. Currently, we do not have an enterprise zone program administrator, but we do have one starting on December 28th. So we will make those introductions at the beginning of 2021. But until that time, this phone number, this email address will get you Joy or myself. And we do have Annie Arnest on our team, who is part of the Enterprise Zone team. And then, of course, Sabrina Blackett and Jessica Parker also assist us in this program as well. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back over and stop presenting.
So we have a question, Rebecca. Can you review non-eligible businesses and jobs again?
Absolutely. So non-eligible businesses would be nonprofits and governmental entities. Non-eligible positions are retail, personal service, or food and beverage. And if you have a specific kind of business or a specific kind of position that you're unsure of, let us know. You're welcome, Mandy. Nice to see you. All right. Well, you guys must know all of this stuff. That's great.
Let me ask if there's anyone on the phone that would want to unmute yourself. I think it's *6. Can unmute. If you have questions, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask those now. And if you're still on the call or in the video portion, just go ahead and throw your question in the chat and we'll be happy to answer that. Okay, we've got a question. Higher institutions of higher learning or community colleges ineligible or not?
If it is a unit of local government, a unit of government, so I think community colleges, maybe not. That's an interesting question, though, thinking about private universities. Have not gotten that question before.
But if they were nonprofit, I mean, a lot of private colleges would be operating, I'm assuming, as a
nonprofit. Yeah. So if those are nonprofit positions or nonprofit entities, that would be a no.
And I think community colleges are considered state.
Yeah.
So they would not be eligible. You mentioned that anyone touches the body would not qualify. What about nurses and doctors?
I believe nurses and doctors do not count as personal care. But do note that we, in the manual and in the presentation, we call out the specific NAICS code that does not qualify under that personal care provision. So as you are going through the NAICS codes, whatever doctors and nurses fall under, if they fall under that code, then no. If they do not fall under that code, and I apologize for not knowing all of the NAICS codes off the top of my head or exactly how those shake out in terms of some of those overall job types, but the answer is always in the NAICS codes. I just, having been through this presentation a number of times, even listening to other people do it, I also know even if they're touching your body after you're dead. So funeral homes, I believe, also count as personal care or personal service, and do not count for job creation grants, which is why I didn't become a funeral director. You're welcome, to Tamara. Any other questions? And, you know, keep in mind, January 1 through April 1 is enterprise zone season for us. Things really ramp up in March. That's when the applications start coming in fast and furious, but just because April 1st is the deadline for receiving those applications, we are still plugging along reviewing them again until May 15th, essentially, and then re-reviewing that information that is then received to resolve the deficiencies. So essentially the first half of the year for us is enterprise zone, enterprise zone, enterprise zone. We are available to take your calls, respond to your emails. So you have our contact information. Please feel free to be in touch with us with any questions. And hopefully, probably, we'll see some of you this afternoon when Joy does the real property investment grant, how to qualify presentation as well. So if we have no new questions, it is really lovely to see some of you this morning. Those of you we can see. I am sorry that we aren't together in person. I think I speak for the majority of our staff when I say that we are all feeling a little itchy to be back out on the road and be back in your communities and see these projects and see our communities and our folks around the state. So it is nice to see some of you virtually this morning. Thank you so much. We will adjourn and stop recording at this point. Thank you to my technical folks in the background and to my dog for eventually falling asleep. I sincerely apologize for his performance this morning. I can only assume that a box was being delivered or something.